Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, here to break down all of Week 13's biggest games with Pat Kerrane, Denny Carter, Kyle Dvorchak as they stifle laughter. Someone may have said a potty word off the air before we came on.
We're looking into who did this.
We're looking into who did it. We're going to talk Chiefs, Bengals. We're going to talk Jaguars, Lions, and the surprising shootout of the week, the little shootout that could, the Dolphins and 49ers, and so much more. A lot to get to this week, but before Sunday, guys, we got to watch something on Saturday. That is Team USA versus the Netherlands in the knockout rounds of the World Cup. Are we excited?
We're very excited. By we, I assume I mean you and me, Roto Pat, right?
Yeah, pretty much. We're the only ones who've actually watched every game. I don't think Denny's watched a single minute of the tournament.
No, I tried to watch.
Anti-American.
I tried to watch the US-Iran game. I don't know. I ended up watching Twin Peaks instead. I don't know how that
Wow. I watched the US England game in a bar.
Should have picked a different one.
Good.
Yeah, the Midtown
played well.
New York, which is the worst part of New York. No, it was a terrible game and it was a terrible sport. And I had some idiot with an American accent rooting for England in my ear.
Are you
serious?
serious?
An American accent, don't root for England. You're a poser.
Oh,
ridiculous.
Let me guess. His grandma was from Sussex.
No. He probably he probably plays England as England in FIFA.
In FIFA. Or no, he
That's
has really fond memories of when he was in Stoke on Trent, or was it Trent on Stoke? Can you even remember? Do you even remember why you're rooting for them?
I do have a question though. When these people who claim 6, 7, 8 different nationalities, what do they do during the World Cup? You know, they say, "Oh, I'm 6% Irish, I'm 4% English." Like, what? Like, is it the largest percentage? That's the team you're rooting for? You just
No, much like soccer in real life, they claim the best team that will accept them.
Right.
All right.
Right.
That makes that's good process.
Now I actually had to. This guy we're at a packed bar. This guy has beer on our table, so he's sort of like watching, and he's like screaming into my ear, which is now ringing. And it came back from the bathroom at one point. I went to put his beer on a table, and I literally just had to go, "No, you're not putting your beer here. Go somewhere else."
You were ready to do fisticuffs, actually.
Wow. I was. That's how heated I was.
Wow.
So after that, I haven't watched any more of the World Cup.
After he almost got beat by a fake English fan, did he go away with with his English tail between his legs, or was he? Really
bad? like the English always do.
Whoa.
On,
Sorry, England.
Neil Dutton, he's our friend. We got a lot of English friends.
Oh, yeah.
Just because we've beaten them in every war of consequence doesn't mean that we're supposed to say stuff like that. But the Netherlands. Is it the Netherlands? Are you Dutch? Is it Holland? Like, can you make up your mind? You at least chose a color, a pretty cool color, orange. But yeah, come on, you gotta make up your mind.
Not that many. I didn't know that about you.
I think I'm gonna take the approach of Austin Powers' father in this one and say that I hate those who are intolerant of other people's culture and the Dutch.
That's right. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say you were going to take the Netherlands money line because you're an anti-American fool.
No.
You keep trying to paint me with this brush, and it's not working. I don't care enough. I'm sorry.
I am happy about the timing of the game. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I will be watching it at my own house, peace and quiet, and I'll root for the USA and I'll watch the game. But
I was gonna say you should go to a soccer bar to really enjoy it, and it sounds like you tried that once, had a terrible experience, and I don't blame you. Stay home for this one, maybe.
Yeah, stay home.
I've never felt more in my 30s than as that young man screamed in my ear.
We gotta stay home for Chiefs at Bengals, one of the games of the week. Kansas City and Cincinnati are rematching last season's AFC Championship game, with the Chiefs arriving in Ohio as modest road favorites. Kyle, there's been a lot going on in this Chiefs receiver core. Who, if anyone, can we trust behind Juju Smith-Schuster?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say you can probably trust Juju, but that's only because we have a pretty strong season-long prior of him clearly being this team's number one receiver, obviously outside of Travis Kelce. But last week, we did not see that at all. He had a 46% route rate. I am going to optimistically chalk that up to, it was his first game back from I watched it. It was a pretty brutal concussion, frankly. So I'm going to chalk that up to back in a game in which his opponents never stood a chance, so you don't need to play him every single snap. But last week was concerning. Justin Watson again led the team in routes, which has been a constant over the past.
Boy, do they love that guy.
Yeah, they really love Justin Watson, which, why? I was going to try and defend him, but no, why do they like Watson? So I probably expect Juju's route rate to climb. It was really strong. It was hovering around 80% plus before he suffered that concussion. And he was being productive leading up until the concussion. He was playing his best football. He was really slow to start the year and finally started catching his stride right before going down with the injury. So I don't think there's any reason that this should be a trend we see. But I do think it's Juju. And even then, you're a little bit more hesitant than you were a few weeks ago.
Any counter opinions on the Chiefs receiver core? Again, it's the total 53. I mean, you would like to think a Chiefs receiver is going to score some fantasy points this week. A Chiefs receiver not named Juju Smith-Schuster, that is. But or is it just too unpredictable?
I don't think you can play any of the other guys except Juju. And I agree with Kyle. I think last week was probably a blip. But, I mean, 46% route participation is like a disaster if that's what he has again this week. I don't think he will. But, like, he's only at 75% for the year. So he could be at like 65, 70%. Like even that's kind of rough. You're not playing Justin Watson. Marcus Valdes-Scantling. I was making the point that like they clearly don't want Sky Moore on the field, but Sky Moore is seeing the same first read target rate as Marcus Valdes-Scantling. So it's like and I was like trying to figure out why that would be. I don't think it's necessarily about the play calling so much as that he's just not getting open. He ranks really, really low in ESPN's open score. He's just struggling, man. So
I thought we were done talking about the English. Now you're talking about the British Open. Please stop.
I have something on Sky Moore. He's being targeted at a very high rate of his routes, 32%, in fact, and that leads the team over the past 3 weeks. Problem is he's not running many routes at all. If we just get a little bump, we're not asking for much. Like we're not asking for a 90% route rate. If that were to happen, it would be a whole new ball game. But even like 60%, something over 50, it would be really good for Sky Moore. I have a little bit of interest in him in deep leagues, DFS. But yeah, I think Juju's pretty much the only game in town when it comes to receivers for the Chiefs.
Sky Moore becoming one of the ultimate this time it counts players, by the way. Sorry, Pat.
Well, I've been pretty bullish on Sky Moore, especially early in the season and in the preseason. I don't think it's happening. I think like when you look at I think he's probably going to run fewer routes than he did last week, if anything. Yeah. His targets last week he had 6. He only had 1 first read target of the 6 last week. So it's like they don't want him on the field. Everyone has to get hurt for him to be even on the field. And when he gets out on the field, they're calling plays for everyone but him. He's getting open and doing stuff. Like I think maybe next year he could be interesting, but I'm pretty pessimistic this week.
Pat, Denny's supposed to be your podcasting brother. Never directly contradict him like that again.
Well, look, I feel weird because I've been saying Sky Moore. I don't even know who Sky Moore is. Who cares? Who cares about Sky Moore?
Keep doing that, Denny. That's probably what's going to be the case.
I just threw a bone and I said, "Hey, Sky Moore, you never know."
Hey, you're expecting one of the Sky Moore sickos we work with every day to hop in line with you, and of course, all of a sudden they're out on Sky Moore now. Apparently.
I know Pat and I are the Sky Moore sickos. I know we both have a ton of Sky Moore bags in best ball, but like. If it was going to happen, it was going to be in the past few weeks. And in terms of his usage, it hasn't happened. I kind of, like Pat said, I kind of think he's good when he's on the field, but we have to listen to what the team tells us. And they tell us they do not want to see much more Sky Moore.
Well, that's a real shame. They are telling us things in their backfield. At least we hope so, Denny. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco seems to have taken the early down duties, but Ronald Jones has suddenly been involved after Clyde Edwards-Helaire laying on injured reserve. Was that just like a 1-week wrinkle because of injury last week, or is there anything weird going on in the Chiefs backfield?
So, Melvin Gordon kind of throws a wrench into things. I was going to say we can expect Ronald Jones to be active for as long as CEH is out. But, with Melvin Gordon now, I can't say that for sure. Last week.
Forgot about that guy.
Last week with Edwards-Helaire out for the first time against the Rams, Pacheco saw 51% of the team's snaps, 22 of 26 Kansas City carries, and 33% of the routes. Jerick McKinnon ran 44% of the routes last week against the Rams. He does have a hamstring issue right now. And if he were to miss, I think it would be pretty big for Pacheco. It might give him an avenue to get up to 60, maybe 70% of routes. It would make him a really exciting play, I think. But yeah, 22 of 26 carries. I think we'll see something like that going forward as long as CEH is out, and maybe after.
And hopefully,
do you think Melvin Gordon would be active?
Andy Reid said maybe. We'll see. He had some good things to say about him, but yeah, I think there's a good chance he won't be active. If he is active, I would guess he's going to be active over Ronald Jones, which is something.
I think that they probably did not want him to be active, but might have to make him active just because of the injury situation.
Oh, and wait, I mean, this assumes McKinnon is going to play.
Yeah, I think he's only active if McKinnon's out, but I could see them at least trying to replace McKinnon's pass protection role with Melvin Gordon. I don't think Pacheco really profiles as a guy who takes the field on third downs. Ronald Jones certainly does not.
Definitely doesn't.
Yeah, so I think Melvin Gordon would be in for a non-fantasy useful but decent snap share type of role.
You all seem pretty confused about the Chiefs backfield, I'll be honest.
Well, no, I mean, the simple thing is you if you have Pacheco, you're playing him. It's true.
And, well, with a 53 total, we're hoping to get some goal line carries and maybe some tutters this week.
I think you're playing him if McKinnon's out. If McKinnon's not out,
hold on, you're not playing. Hold on, you're not playing Pacheco with McKinnon. I mean, you've not been playing him the past few weeks. You kidding me?
I think that we're talking about a back and forth passing shootout here. I'm not all that excited about a back who's probably playing like 40% of snaps if McKinnon's healthy.
I mean, I think his carries floor is probably still like 15, to be honest.
So I don't know.
Floor is strong, or 15 strong, maybe 12.
I don't know if this matters with Kansas City. Probably doesn't. But I did want to mention that Cincinnati is like the 5th most extreme run funnel defense in the league. So, but the thing is, it's not a run funnel because the Bengals are bad against the run. They're just a little worse against the run than they are against the pass. So it's not. I'm not saying that they're going to establish it like the Bears, but I think that could be a little bit in favor of Pacheco.
Yeah, I'd say if you're not starting Pacheco with the highest team total of the week as a favorite, you just never be starting him. Right. I mean, I know obviously this looks like a fun passing game, but games that score a lot of points are also good. So that's where I'd be starting him. Though I get the concern that maybe they just run the ball like 9 times in total.
You know, sometimes you think you know someone, and then you find out Patrick Kerrane doesn't like Sky Moore. He doesn't like Isaiah Pacheco.
Well, I've been consistent on that point.
I knew you. No, I mean, you gotta like swaggy Chiefs, is what I'm saying. I couldn't remember if you liked Pacheco or not.
No, I Pacheco's actually kind of won me over. I think he's fine, but it's more about just kind of who the Chiefs are, who the Bengals are. I think the Bengals are gonna be throwing a ton in this game.
Right.
Chiefs are gonna be throwing a ton. If McKinnon's available, then I think he'll play 60% of the snaps. I really do, 55-60. So it just doesn't leave a ton of.
I actually don't agree with that, but you mentioned the Bengals. I don't know. I'm not going to give you a chance for the last word. I have no idea why. You mentioned you think the Bengals are going to be throwing a lot. We got to talk about Jamar Chase. What does this return to lineup do to T. Higgins, if anything? Any chance it's actually good news for Tyler Boyd, who was producing more before Jamar Chase got hurt? Maybe it's weird statistical noise. Is Hayden Hurst canceled, etc.?
I don't think anything's really good for Tyler Boyd. He was supposed to be like a contingent value option. He really hasn't done much, even with Chase out. 14% target rate this year is terrible. So I'm not into Tyler Boyd with Chase back. Hayden Hurst is the same guy he always is, but I think he's a little bit more interesting just because he's a tight end and we need to fill the tight end spot somehow. So he's kind of a decent volume-based PPR guy. In general, I think Chase coming back is probably good in general. He's seen extra defensive attention on 30% of his routes, which is one of the highest rates in the league. So he's going to help open up things. And we're not entirely sure how healthy he is. So maybe he's not drawing targets at the same rate that he typically is. He'll probably draw defensive coverage at a similar rate, though, unless he's just like clearly not right in a decoy. But I doubt that is the case. And so I think he'll probably help open up things for T. Higgins. And then we also just have a lot of potential for passing volume this week. So I'm not like quite as concerned about, oh no, he's going to steal targets. Like there might be plenty of targets overall. So it's more just about like if Chase can help Higgins, get open for a big play. I mean, that's all you really need.
Are we 4 for 4? Are we all returning Jamar Chase ahead of T. Higgins in the rankings, or any of us galaxy braining that one?
I kind of want to galaxy brain it.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
I'd be okay galaxy braining it. I mean, we don't know the health, and they're barely even.
I feel better that they gave him the extra week now to get healthy.
Well, he asked for the extra week first, and I read about it. He said, "Hey, I need one more week," and Zach Taylor said, "Fine." And then a Bengals beat writer the other day said Chase will play some snaps against the Chiefs.
Oh, I don't like these things you're telling me.
And I asked, and I actually asked him on Twitter, "What do you mean?" And I didn't get a response yet, so we're looking into it.
Honestly, maybe Chase is the galaxy brain play. You're playing a guy with a broken hip. I'm playing a guy who knows running all the routes.
Well, you're playing the best wide receiver on planet Earth, is what you're playing, Pat.
Tyreek Hill has something to say about that.
Yeah, I think a couple of guys.
Tyreek Hill's the
Justin Watson
fastest.
playing all the
Justin
snaps for the
Jefferson.
Chiefs would like to.
Tyreek Hill's the fastest. Devontae Adams, the PPR scammiest. Steph Diggs is the angriest.
Wow.
Damn.
Jamar Chase
Slander. Who do you like? Who do you think's good? Jamar Chase, and that's it.
I think Jamar Chase is very, very, very good. Jamar, we're all counting on you. Please come back and play a lot of snaps.
I was gonna say that's true. Isn't Chase one of your keeps the roof on the house guys, Pat?
He is. The roof is leaking, and it's getting quite cold here in the Middle West this time of year. So Jamar, we're welcoming you back with open arms. Coming off a road win against the Colts, the Steelers arrive in Atlanta as somewhat surprising favorites. Kerrane, what do the folks need to know about this game?
So the Falcons used to be a major pass funnel, but then they played a bunch of teams that were like, we'd rather run on you. 4 of their last 5 opponents have a pass rate over expected of minus 14% or lower. That's a really, really heavy run heavy rate. And it's actually kind of brought the Falcons to where they actually look like a slight run funnel now. But the bottom line is they're kind of like one of these Lions type defenses where you can do whatever you want against the Falcons. It's really more about how you want to operate your offense. The Steelers are operating as a run first team. They have a minus 4% pass rate of expected. I think they're going to be yet another one of these teams who decides to run on the Falcons as opposed to pass on them. That said, I think Kenny Pickett will be more efficient this week than he has been so far this year. The Falcons are just 27th in EPA allowed per dropback. They're 29th in dropback success rate allowed. But I do think volume is still going to be an issue for the Steelers defense. They're not going to be just, dropping back constantly. If we're looking for efficiency at this point, I think the bet is Pat Freiermuth. He leads the Steelers with a 1.73 yards per route run. We obviously get that sweet tight end eligibility. And he's tied with Deontay Johnson now for the team lead in first read target rate. So it's not even like entirely clear, the whole Deontay Johnson thing. Like, we kind of took a big L on that one because it's not even clear that he's the number one guy there now. It might be Freiermuth. So that's how I would be playing the Steelers if I was going to be playing them in this matchup through the air. And as far as the wide receivers go, I'd rather bet on George Pickens at this point because, again, I think we're looking for efficiency. We're looking for a guy who can hit some big plays because I don't think volume is necessarily going to be there. Pickens isn't all that efficient. He only has 1.25 yards per route run, but I think conceptually we can see him getting there with a touchdown, a nice catch, something like that. We're looking at maybe Jaylen Warren leading the backfield here with Najee Harris banged up with this abdominal injury. It's probably good for the Steelers running game if Harris isn't there. Harris has been absolutely terrible. He ranks running back 46 in rush yards over expected per attempt, running back 45 in success rate. He's doing nothing. Benny Snell was efficient in the same offense last week. Benny Snell. So, anyone's probably an upgrade at this point. I think Warren's probably going to be the 1A. He's coming off injury, but not on the injury report or full practice. So I think we'll see him in kind of like the around 60% snap range, maybe a little higher. And so he's like a viable RB2, I think. Not super exciting. On the Falcons side, they're playing a Steelers defense that's pretty strong against the run. They're 7th in rushing success rate. They're weaker against the pass, 21st in dropback success rate. But we've seen repeatedly the Falcons only have one gear they run. It doesn't matter what the matchup, doesn't matter what the game script is, they run. So we're going to see them running against this team. They had a minus 19% PROE against the Commanders, which have an awesome run defense. They just don't care. So they're going to run. They're going to be inefficient while running. There's nothing here in this passing game. Even with Kyle Pitts out of the lineup, Drake London saw a first read target on just 4% of his routes. Olamide Zaccheaus led the way instead.
Who's getting the first read in this offense?
Olamide Zaccheaus. That's the top guy right now. So it's a big no thanks for me here on the passing game. Cordell Patterson had 58% of the snaps against the Commanders. Tyler Algier saw his snap share drop from 48% to 39%. So I think maybe Patterson's in play as kind of a touchdown dependent guy, but you're not getting anything in the passing game from him. So it's got to be that he gets in the end zone, or they just are able to just fully establish it with the Steelers also going run heavy on the other side, and you get there on kind of some rushing volume, but not the most exciting game.
No, not at all. And by the way, for Denny and I may have blown the whole lid off the Deontay Johnson expected points thing. Check out Galaxy Brains this week. And
okay.
I think his own coach has been
we went deep.
We went deep. There's another level to this game.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers swears to God he's going to play through his thumb and rib issues against the Bears. Denny, Justin Fields is questionable. Beyond the quarterback injuries, what is there to know about this game?
Yeah, I am asking, pleading with Aaron Rodgers to maybe just sit one out and let us have Jordan Love just for 1 week. After
Counterpoint to that, no.
Well, he looked pretty great to me when I watched the Jordan Love dot on the screen. It was really doing well against the Eagles. Yeah. So here's what we have in this game. You have Chase Claypool taking on probably a wide receiver one role for this offense, not in fantasy, with Darnell Mooney out for the year. Last week, Claypool was up to 75% of the routes in this offense against the Jets. He saw 5 targets. That was the second most behind Cole Kmet. Claypool, and by the way, Kmet I think is still obviously playable in 12-team leagues. Claypool has been targeted on 28% of his routes since joining the Bears in Week 9. That's the 11th highest rate among all wideouts over that span. So you have that, and you have the Bears running no matter what. Really, just like what Kerrane was saying with the Falcons, they were 17% under their expected pass rate last week in their blowout loss to the Jets. Pretty incredible. Of course, that was without Justin Fields, but really the way they operate doesn't change much with Fields in there. It's not quite that run heavy, especially of late. But David Montgomery had 15 carries against the Jets and 5 targets on 67% of the routes. Only 3 defenses give up more positive rushing attempts than the Packers this season. And when these teams played in Week 3 with the Bears chasing points basically the entire game, I was going to say this the second half, but it was almost the entire game. They still were way under their expected pass rate, and Montgomery and Khalil Herbert combined for 19 carries and 160 yards against these Packers. I think it doesn't matter what happens. David Montgomery's going to see 20 touches and probably do okay.
I think he will. Kyle, do we think as our injury report guy, I mean, we all kind of are, but what do we think about Justin Fields? Like, is he actually going to play? Is this kind of like a smoke screen? The Bears are on bye in Week 14. It seems like it would make all the sense in the world to hold out Justin Fields for one more game, but early indications are that he's going to play.
Yeah, that's kind of how I've taken it as well, that it looks like he should be able to come back this week. No, but especially with their backup situation in which Trevor Siemian was supposed to play, wasn't supposed to play, then ended up playing through this pregame oblique injury, I think they call it, core injury.
Sounded like he coughed up a lung, basically.
Yeah, and then he started the week as a DNP this week. So, although yes, you obviously would just prefer to sit Justin Fields till 2023. That'd be great. Get him healthy for that season.
Yeah, we have an update.
Yeah, we have an update.
Yeah,
this is breaking. This is breaking.
Yeah, it is. Adam Schefter says that Justin Fields returned to practice in a full capacity today, which is Thursday.
So thank God. He's going to play.
Because if it wasn't going to be him, the punchline was going to be, it might be Nathan Peterman. It was
Peterman. Turn on Channel 9.
It was nearly. We had a brush with the apocalypse last week with Peterman almost getting a start. So that was going to be the punchline. But it seems like, again, we have narrowly avoided a meteor hitting the earth.
As a born poster, each day that Nathan Peterman starts is the new best day of my life, because then I get to tweet about it. So I'm actually hoping he does play. Denny, do you have some thoughts there? It looked like maybe you did, or no?
No. I'm all out of thoughts on this.
All right. All out of thoughts. Pretty fair for GB at Shia. Aaron Rodgers really has seemed like basically guarantees playing. So whatever.
Yeah. And by the way, he's a great start because the Bears defense is A, terrible, and B, banged up like crazy. They're missing a bunch of starters on the back end.
And the Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers just gutted the Bears in Week 2. And the Bears defense has not gotten better in the interim. So yeah, really, really good setup for Green Bay. The Jacksonville Jaguars and the Detroit Lions are squaring off in the little shootout that could in Detroit. Riding off Trevor Lawrence's career Week 12, Jacksonville arrives in town as 1-point favorites, Patrick Kerrane. There's a lot to unpack here, but let's start in the Jaguars receiver corps that has seen Zay Jones making a move. Is he really threatening Christian Kirk? I think we probably all vote no on that.
No, he is. He definitely is. So I have this metric. It's a scaled version of Ben Gretch's weighted targets per out run. It's scaled to the yards per out run scale. So expected yards per out run. Christian Kirk is at 1.77, which is like, if you have a 1.77 yards per out run, that's like okay. It's not great. It's not bad. Jones is at 1.75. They're seeing basically the exact same volume on a per route basis, and they're running the same amount of routes more or less. Kirk is at 95% route participation. Zay Jones at 92%. So Kirk has like a very tiny lead in both metrics. He also has a slight lead in first read target rate, but they're essentially like, I would say, the number one options here. They're not like, even calling Kirk the 1A to Jones 1B is kind of like just because he's Kirk. There's not really any
because he does actually make big plays. He scores touchdowns. Zay is really kind of captain of 8 catches for 60 yards, which is useful in fantasy. But
outside of times he goes 10 for 140, he's mostly.
Well,
didn't he just see 14 targets?
Besides his best game,
I mean, why are you taking that away?
All those other games,
which was, by the way, last week.
I will say I'm the only one who's been ranking Zay Jones as someone like actually catching passes. By the way, let me just say that I've been on the Zay Jones beat for weeks here.
Is that true?
Once all year.
Is that true, Pat? Do you know where I had Zay Jones ranked last week?
Tell me.
I don't know. I was hoping you knew.
The guy was like wide receiver 38. No, the industry has not. They seem slow to adapt, slow to accept our new Zay Jones reality. Which Kerrane?
Josh Norris has been on it since the preseason.
That's true.
He's
never heard of him.
The only guy who likes Zay Jones more than Derek Carr is Josh Norris. So
I like Zay Jones more than whoever hands out the money in Jacksonville.
Yeah, man. I tell you what, Zay Jones must be a hell of a leader because
he's done well for himself.
He sure has.
So anyway, okay, it is bad actually, is what you're saying though. But I mean, it's
not good for Kirk. Yeah, I mean, it probably also just points to the fact that Kirk is not really a number one.
Yeah,
right.
Never has been at any point in his career. Never profiled like he would be.
Other than one day in March, according
one
to
day in March, he sure did. But yeah, I mean, he's he's kind of a number 2, like a really, really good number 3. But I don't think we can rely on him as like the clear number 1 or even the 1A here.
He just never ever seemed to know what to do with the guy. I will say, even when Zay Jones, I don't know, I was thinking of 2 weeks ago where Kirk had a big game.
I feel like we're talking a little bit too down on Christian Kirk. I mean, I know that this could slip away in the coming weeks, but he leads the team in air yard share and target share. He's 9th among all receivers in targets per route run since week 9. Like, I know it's been up and down a little bit, but I'm good. I really like Christian Kirk's spot this week. I'm sure you guys do too.
Then he has 7 tutters too. You buried the lead. 7 tutties.
I don't even.
Yeah, I'm being overly negative in him in regards to his lead on Zay Jones, but I think it's a great matchup for it. Like, but he barely has a target share lead. I have it as both at 23%, 29% to 25% in air yard share. So it's like, I'm just kind of saying like, he's not a clear-cut alpha at all.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But as a matchup-based bump on this passing game, as potential double stack partner,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he does have almost 200 more yards than Zay Jones, which does matter.
But Zay Jones
played one more game.
Has he played one more game? Oh my god!
Yeah, and Zay probably would have gotten the 200 yards in that one.
Yeah, it was a 200 yards one.
So, of course, he's played one more game. But anyways, a lot going on with this Jags team. Kyle, Travis Etienne popped up with the worst possible injury designation for a Lisfranc survivor in Week 12. Departed with his foot. They claimed
in hand, with his foot in hand, is how he departed.
They claimed it was purely precautionary. He is practicing. I guess we think he's going to play, but do we think he's going to cede more work than usual to Jermichael Hasty?
I would think not. I actually do kind of buy the fact that it was a pretty precautionary approach. I mean, obviously you just have to take Doug Peterson at his word, but he did say that Etienne was cleared to return in that game, and they just held him out just to be safe. Then we saw a limited practice start the week, which like players who are just completely fine get limited practices, let alone a guy who we thought might be hurt. So I think he's probably fine. Then beat reporters, we haven't gotten the injury report as Thursday, said he was moving fine in practice Thursday. He was dominating stuff up since that final game James Robinson was on the team, which he was hardly on the team for that final game anyway. So I think he looks healthy. They've been giving him a ton of work. And last week, maybe it's just the hopium in me that I want Travis Etienne to be a thing, but every sign points to him still being a thing. So I don't think it's going to be much more work than usual given away to Jermichael Hasty. And although it's a good matchup through the air for the team, also a good matchup on the ground. So I'd have no hesitancy firing up this week.
Jaguars have also been pretty balanced. So I think this is like, I mean, I hope he doesn't get steamed, but this is a DFS spot where I'm like kind of excited to go to Travis Etienne if everyone's gonna play Christian Kirk like a bunch of donkeys.
Well, and Etienne could be under rostered due to injury fear, obviously. So pretty interesting Week 13 DFS.
Yeah, wait. As the host or a guest or whatever you call me on this podcast, someone who'd love to play Etienne, he's really hurt, guys. I don't even know. Don't worry, don't put him in your lineup. Don't worry.
There you go. You heard it here first from DFS expert Kyle Expert. Denny, it's a high total game. We're expecting to be a high scoring game, but are there any Lions pass catchers we can really rely on beyond Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has finally gotten healthy and is just dominating again over the past 3 weeks?
There's a guy named DJ Chark, folks. He is playing. Last week, he ran 80% of the routes against the Bills. He caught 2 of 5 targets for a whopping 16 yards and a touchdown against Buffalo. He remains the team's best downfield threat. So if you think this game is going to go back and forth, if you think, as the kids are saying, it's going to pop off, then, I think Chark could get involved here. He had the second most air yards for Detroit in Week 12. Before his Week 4 ankle injury, he led the team in air yard share, 35% of the air yards, in fact, in those first 3 weeks. And he was targeted downfield more than anyone else. So he still profiles as the only game in town if they're going to go deep, if golf is going to go deep. Very thin play, but I think that if this game goes back and forth, he could be okay, for 14-team leagues maybe.
Wanted to open this one up to the floor. DeAndre Swift has been removed from the injury report altogether. He played more in Week 12. He was playing like really high-value snaps, getting some high-value touches, even though the overall touch count wasn't quite what we want to see. Is there anyone kind of getting back on the DeAndre Swift train as we get close to the fantasy playoffs?
I'm not bullish on him. Does that make sense? I mean, I feel like his usage was not horrible. I mean, I know that Jamal Williams gets all the goal line stuff. I get that. But like they missed DeAndre Swift on a touchdown on a wheel route. He had one called back because his knee scraped the ground when he bowled over 3 guys into the end zone. He caught a 2-point conversion. He had 3 high-value touches last week. He's finally not hurt. The Jags give up the 5th most running back receptions. Folks, I'm building a case for DeAndre Swift if you feel like playing him this week.
I think he's capped at about 50% of snaps. He had 34% last week, so that would be a big increase. But then Justin Jackson had 25%. So if Justin Jackson gets down to like around 10%, Williams is still going to be involved around 40. I think maybe he gets to 50% of snaps, but you need him to run really hot. 50% like, snap share.
When 50% is the optimistic case, it is tough sledding out there. Like when you're like, oh boy, I really hope he comes close to seeing the field half the time. And maybe Godspeed, he could push for 10 touches. He hasn't topped 10 touches since Week 1. Like, of course I want the Andres to be a thing, but like Lions maybe this is finally it. He's finally healthy for real this time. It counts though. But I don't know. It's I've been beaten into submission by them giving Swift no actual like volume.
Well, it sounds like since we're finally giving up on him, he will, of course, go off.
Right.
I'm not giving up. I think if you have him and you're torn between him and I'm trying to think of like another like.
And I would play him over Antonio Gibson and play him over.
What about Pacheco? You guys were bullish on Pacheco. You playing?
No, I have Pacheco a few spots. I have a few spots. Have Pacheco a few spots ahead of Swift still.
In PPR, I would be pretty torn on that. I think I might go Swift.
I do on Thanksgiving. Against the Bills, one of the best teams, they were anytime there was like an important third down or something, they were getting DeAndre Swift out there, and they were usually giving him the ball.
I feel like it was way more positive last week than it has been. It's been dismal. It's been dismal. Very dark lately.
It's been very, very dismal
for him.
And this show will not be dismal. We're going to take a quick break. Download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. The Tennessee Titans and Philadelphia Eagles ready for this week's best game that might be a tough watch still, Kyle. Set the scene for us in Philadelphia, where I'm surprised at the amount of points the Eagles are favored by, currently 4.5.
Yeah, I think the Eagles, at least in terms of Vegas, is still giving them, and I'd say rightfully so. I'm not as surprised as you are for their start to the season. Also, though, I mean, it is kind of a good matchup to face the Green Bay defense when you're one of the best run teams in the NFL, but they did drop 40 on them. So I get it. Starting with the Tennessee side, I mean, I think there's two players you can actually care about. Obviously, Derrick Henry, we don't need to talk about him. He's, I believe, number 2 in rushing, number 1 or 2 in expected rushing fantasy points. Obviously, start him. I don't care about good matchup, bad matchup, underdog favorite, whatever. But Treylon Burks, I think we're finally arriving at the Treylon Burks breakout. 81% route rate last week, and he has married that with being incredibly efficient since returning to the lineup 3 weeks ago, or maybe it was 3 games ago. He's 12th in yards per route run since returning from that. I believe it was a foot injury, 30% air yard share, 21% air yard share. I think it's the season. I think it's Trey Lurk's season, right in time for the holidays. So that's the only other player for this team I really would consider starting, like not Ryan Tannehill, none of the tight ends. And then on the other side, Titans are not a bad defense either way, really, versus the runner versus the pass, but they are brutal against the run, and that has forced teams to throw against them. They actually end up giving up the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, the 3rd most passing yards, and the 4th most passing touchdowns. So as if you had any sort of concerns about Jalen Hurts, don't. And without Dallas Goedert in the lineup, none of the tight ends have made an impact. No. And in turn, Devon Smith really turning things up, 56% air yard share, 38% target share in just 2 games. So it's not a huge sample without Dallas Goedert. So I'm not saying the flipping has happened by any means, but it looks like he's really been the one who's had an uptick in his usage since we lost Dallas Goedert.
Quez Watkins is running a lot more routes too, just with Goddard out. So I mean, very thin.
They're very similar players.
So he also gets a lot of screens, which is something that they were using Goddard for. So it's kind of an interesting. He's out of the slot too, so it's he's not a tight end, but he's getting some of the over the middle stuff.
And Kyle made an interesting point about the Titans. So not a good week to point chase with Miles Sanders. The Titans are elite against the run, and Miles Sanders is not going to be stacking W's this week.
But you got to start them.
You do have to start them. Even though they're home favorites, it's back to 16 carries, 6 to 8 yards, and praying for a touchdown with Miles Sanders.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that to the Devontae Smith stuff, I think he's probably the safest option this week. He seems to be involved, when they have trouble protecting Jalen Hurts, which they could a little bit this week. Then he's more involved in the quick game stuff and the screen game as well. So I think he's getting his targets this week. I think AJ Brown is set up for a potential monster ceiling game here, but Smith is kind of just he's going to be fine. He's your
I think
double.
AJ Brown. I think we are getting it this week where teams buy into this stuff too. AJ Brown is pissed at the Titans. I think they actually are going to collaborate to make this happen.
I'm begging them.
He tweet anytime a Titans pass drops a ball, he tweets lol. They're gonna. And Nick Sirianni
does he say it that way though? Do you think that's
LOL? Is he an LOL or a lol guy?
LOL. I say lol. Nick Sirianni seems like kind of an emotional coach. I think that's
really a great point.
I've been actually kind of yelling at fans in the middle of a game. Just walked over to the sidelines to yell at fans. That guy has a little bit of a run hot in him.
Yeah, I think they're making
that's a good point. I wouldn't be surprised if AJ Brown was covering Treylon Burks.
It's first career snaps at cornerback, just locking him down too.
Yeah.
So a note on AJ Brown. And by the way, I was on the fence of who to make the cover boy for the walkthrough this week. It's going to be AJ Brown now. I mean, come on, that return home narrative. It's got to be.
That's the analytics, folks.
It is the analytics.
Man, that's so good. But yeah, substantial lead in air yard share over Devontae Smith, 41% to 31%. But he's also seeing a lot more over the middle of the field targets. If you look at middle of field targets traveling 10 plus air yards, Brown ranks 78th percentile. Smith is just in the 18th percentile. So if the offense can get going downfield, which I think they'll try to do against this, they're not going to be bothering with the run defense. I completely agree with that point. Brown is really the one who benefits from that downfield attacking passing offense, like we saw when they had the absolute explosion spot against the Steelers. Pat, you're muted.
You're on mute.
3, 2, 1. Riding high off their quarterback change, the New York Football Jets arrive in Minnesota as 3-point underdogs. Patrick Kerrane, tell the folks what they need to know about the fighting Mike Whites.
Yeah, so Mike White here. It is actually kind of exciting. In 20 games, Zach Wilson has produced positive EPA just 6 times. It's pretty bad. His best ever performance is 8.4 expected points added in his best ever performance. Last week, Mike White had 16.8. That's exactly double the best performance Zach Wilson has ever put on tape in his entire career. Mike White is actually taking this offense to another level, like legitimately. I doubt he's probably the long-term answer here. He's playing the Bears defense. They rank 31st in EP allowed per dropback. He's now getting a Vikings defense that's better. They're not great. They're 19th, but they're definitely not Bears level bad. And the Vikings are second in PFF's run grades. So I think whereas the Bears are just bad at everything, and you can have a run first team like the Jets kind of moving the chains, Mike White doesn't have to be relied on. There's no real pressure on him. This will be a little bit different. I think the pressure will be on White a bit more in a tougher matchup. So, he's not going to do what he did last week, but who cares?
Is it tough? Is it a tough matchup? The Vikings do bleed passing production.
It's tougher than the Bears. Yeah, it's not a tough matchup. It's a tougher matchup.
It's at least it's not like a walkover matchup.
It's not a walkover, and I do think when you look at some of these teams like the Jets, they really benefit from when they can be balanced. If they can't run the ball and it's and they're one dimensional with Mike White, all of a sudden he looks a lot less interesting. So I think he's gonna struggle more than last week, but it doesn't matter because we need one thing from him from fantasy. Like, you're not starting Mike White, you're starting Garrett Wilson. And I think Wilson can still get there, and he is a really nice match for Mike White. Wilson, he gets open very easily. He ranks wide receiver 8 in ESPN's open score, which uses this the player tracking data to actually measure where guys are right before the ball is thrown, when the ball is thrown. He's been awesome at getting open. He also has an 8.4 ADOT. Mike White has a shallow ADOT as well. 5.9 ADOT this year, ranks ahead of only Colt McCoy and Kyle Allen. So, he needs to be able to find a guy quickly, shallowly. He is finding that with Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson is going to be clearly the lead guy again this week. We had Corey Davis back in the lineup last week. Garrett Wilson still led the Jets with 90% route participation. First read target rate of 21%, which led the team. He had an elite targets per route run of 29%. He's the guy now. He's clearly the guy. Elijah Moore only had 42% route participation last week. He's still completely off the fantasy radar. So I think White's going to regress, but I still think he can support Garrett Wilson is kind of where I'm at on this Jets offense. The running game, not so interesting to me. It looks like it's going to be Zonovan Knight, but this is actually like a decently tough rushing matchup. I guess in a pinch, not a terrible fill-in option, but
he's around RB 30, 31. He's like a mid-range RB3.
Right. If you look at the Vikings, I'm a little encouraged based on the way they played against the Patriots. Not even just like how the team played, but how they approached the game. They had a 9% pass rate over expected on 1st and 10, 5% pass rate over expected overall. They were setting Cousins up for success. They were leaning on Cousins in what is probably a little bit of an overrated Patriots pass defense, but still like, decently tough matchup that he was in. They weren't worried about it. I think that's a positive sign for how they might approach this tough matchup against a good Jets pass defense. And again, what do we care about? We care about the number one receiver here. No concerns for Justin Jefferson. He saw extra defensive attention last week on 49% of his routes. Bill Belichick did try to take away the number one option. He tried. It didn't work at all. 78% of Jefferson's yards last week came against double coverage. He had 6.0 yards per route run against double coverage. I mean, they tried to take him away. It didn't work. I think we're just, obviously he's matchup proof, but just a huge reminder that he is truly, truly matchup proof. TJ Hawkinson, I think, is the number 2 guy here, even with Adam Thielen having a good game last week. Since joining the Vikings, he has a 20% first read target rate to Thielen's 10%. So I do think Hawkinson's the way to go outside of Jefferson. And then Dalvin Cook, he's seen an 85% plus snap share in 4 of his last 5 games. Still looks like a low-end RB1 as a workhorse with breakaway ability.
TJ Hawkinson has caught 5+ passes in 4 straight games for the first time in his career. Those 4 games, of course, his first with the Vikings. So they have meant very serious business with their trade acquisition. Denny Carter, the Kyle Shanahan Bowl, is taking place in Santa Clara, with the Dolphins arriving in town as 4-point underdogs. Dolphins have some injury concerns of their own. We don't know what's going on with left tackle Terron Armstead. He seems more out than in with his pectoral injury. But the Niners themselves suddenly find themselves undermanned in the backfield with Elijah Mitchell out, Christian McCaffrey banged up. We talked about it a little earlier in the week, Denny, on our show on Monday, or excuse me, was it Tuesday? But what do we know about the state of the Niners backfield? Now, Denny, you are muted.
Sorry. Real quick, I was wondering. I was like, why is no one responding? I wanted to touch on that Terron Armstead injury because I'm going to take the place of Kyle as the offensive line, expert here.
Oh.
I'm going to get in. What do we call it? In the trenches? I'm getting in the trenches, folks.
You're learning. You'll pick up the terminology as you go.
All right. Here's what's happening in the trenches with the Dolphins. This Armstead injury is serious. And yeah, you're right, Pat, about, he's more out than in. I don't think he's going to play this week. Miami has allowed a 26% pressure rate with Armstead in the lineup this year. That pressure rate jumps to 55% when he's out. Some of that is without Tua under center when he was out with that concussion. Last week against Houston, Tua was sacked 4 times on 11 dropbacks without Armstead when he exited the game.
Yikes.
And against a pretty fierce San Francisco pass rush, I feel like this is like a borderline disaster for Tua in the passing game. I'm not saying that you can't start, like, you're starting Waddle, you're starting Tyreek and everybody, but I don't think that they can let anything develop downfield. I think it'll be a bunch of dinking and dunking. I do think they will pass a lot, obviously. I also think that this could open up some more targets for the running backs. Maybe Jeff Wilson, maybe Mostert. It depends on Mostert's health and his involvement. But I think that, Tua's upside is in question here with that Armstead injury. And then you wanted me to talk about the
Niners backfield. Just real quick, too. The 4 sacks and 11 dropbacks without Terron Armstead. Really ominous stat. At least now they've had a week to prepare for not having him. So hopefully now they at least have they'll have a different game plan. I do trust Mike McDaniel, but it's a major concern.
It is. It's big. I'm out of the trenches now. So Jordan Mason was active last week and took on some snaps and some carries with McCaffrey hurting and with Elijah Mitchell out. Of course, Mitchell is done for the season with that knee injury. So Mason was active per 49ers beat writers because Davis Price or is it Price Davis? I never can remember.
Tyrion Davis Price is his name.
Tyrion Davis Price doesn't play special teams, and Jordan Mason does. So with that in mind, I think we will see TDP, as the kids call him, active this week, and that could throw a wrench in, Jordan Mason seeing like a decent workload in that Elijah Mitchell role behind CMC. And this assumes CMC plays. So we have to really closely monitor the Niners practice report. Obviously, if McCaffrey is out, then that changes the calculus completely on Mason, on TDP, on even
say his name.
Yeah, Tevin Coleman, folks.
Yeah,
Tevin Coleman is going to be called up in maybe a certain scenario against the Dolphins, and Shanahan loves Tevin Coleman. So it's a mess. It's a real mess.
Drafted him in Atlanta. Can't quit him. It's a real mess. Patrick Kerrane, what is going on with the 49ers pass catchers? Where I feel like things have been getting weird just with this 49. But Kyle Shanahan is getting into experimentation mode. Why? I'm not really sure. I was thinking maybe Deebo Samuel. If Christian McCaffrey is actually banged up, I think we could see more touches in the Deebo Samuel slasher role this week. What's going on with the Niners pass catchers?
Yeah, no, I agree with you that things are getting weird. One thing that we're seeing is Juwan Jennings is getting meaningful target volume when on the field. We can't do anything with that because he's not out there for enough routes. He's a part-time receiver, but he has a 21% target per route run, second to only Deebo Samuel among 49ers wide receivers. So it's just like the last thing we need because we already have Kittle and Samuel and Ayuk and McCaffrey with prominent roles in the passing game. All of those guys have a yards per route run between 1.64 and 1.85, which is all kind of like fine. But it's a guessing game. You need to figure out who's going to have the target volume funnel to them that specific week. I love the idea of Deebo maybe getting more work out of the backfield. That's the type of thing that would clear this up a little bit. Brandon Ayuk, as far as the receivers go, is the closest thing that we have to like a number one right now. Surprisingly, not Debo. I mean, if you look at the underlying stuff, he leads the 49ers with 1.77 expected yards per route run, leads the team with a 16% first read target rate. It's not a big lead or anything.
He's getting the most red zone targets too.
Yeah, but he got kind of installed as the number one early in the year, and he did a good job. And I think basically he's still in that role as much as there's kind of a number one, which it really isn't.
Except for Juwan Jennings. Kyle, what is the injury situation in Miami's backfield? Raheem Mostert is practicing. Jeff Wilson seems to have survived his leg scare from week 12. What does this mean against the 49ers? A revenge game, we should mention, for both running backs.
I was going to say a revenge game for Jeff Wilson, of course, as if it isn't exactly a revenge game for both. Raheem Mostert back-to-back limited practices, but with his history of injuries, I feel less confident. Like typically when players are getting limited throughout the week this late in the season, that's just, it's maintenance adjacent. For him, I feel less confident. I had to guess, I would imagine he does leave the week questionable and plays, but I actually would be checking up on him as we get inactives coming through. And like you said, Jeff Wilson came through. He left, as a player, I may have loaded up on a little bit of DFS. It's very upsetting to see him leave. He came back in the midst of a true blowout.
There was came back for no reason. That was a good sign.
Yeah. A true blowout. The game was out of hand already, and they gave him a few more carries. It didn't mean anything for me financially, of course. He didn't score on those carries, but the fact that they put him back in the lineup when there had no purpose in doing so tells me he's just fine. So I think we'll see him. I think Mostert's a true 50-50, and not to be outdone by Denny as far as trench talk goes. They lost again Austin Jackson, right tackle this week, so they don't even have the flexibility of using like a swing tackle wherever they choose to. They're starting almost certainly backup tackle at both spots against a run defense that is first in the NFL in a bad way for the opposing running backs in yards per carry allowed. I believe they're also first in EPA per rush allowed. This is easily the best run defense. So although you're probably playing Jeff Wilson, the line issues plus the opponent, you could convince me people will have flex decisions where they shouldn't be playing him.
I actually think this game, just for game script purposes, I think it sets up as a Niners blowout win.
Ooh, I would maybe agree with that if the 49ers weren't the most overrated team in the entire league. Last time they played a functional offense, they got destroyed by Patrick Mahomes.
Isn't Mike McDaniel just like worlds sharper than Kyle Shanahan? I just can't see I just don't want to see Shanahan get the upper.
No, Shanny is sharp, but Shanny is obstinate, and Shanny is Shanny.
Yeah,
I love McDaniel. I want McDaniel to be my little brother.
The problem with this game is
I want him to be my dad.
There's gonna be a game. There's gonna be like a game of one-upsmanship going on. I mean, McDaniel's gonna be trying to out Shanny. I'm kind of afraid, especially since he kind of needs to with the line issues and all that.
This does set up for an Alec Ingold versus Kyle Juszczyk. 6 carries each, 4 targets. Whoa. They're both gonna love to pull out all the dumb stuff they designed over the years for their fullbacks.
Albert Wilson's still in the Dolphins. He's gonna get like 15 targets.
Is there any like? This is almost like the remember the Raiders Super Bowl back in the early 2000s when
2002-03, Brad Johnson, John Gruden, who could forget it,
versus Rich Gannon, and it was actually the guy who was in the old team, and the offensive mind had left to join the Buccaneers. We're not going to say who it was, and that particular coach knew everything that quarterback was going to do. In this case, could this be bad for Jimmy G? Mike McDaniel knows every little trick that Jimmy G is going to try to do. Jimmy G, I think, kind of the more propped up of these two quarterbacks. Maybe Jimmy G gets exposed here.
Ooh, no, I'm not going to. No comment. It's going to be a really, really interesting game. Be a really, really interesting show when we return right after this.
I think Denny's right. I just don't want it to be true.
Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football, on the PGA Tour, and in the World Cup. There's also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the Colts and Cowboys in our Sunday Night 7 contest. Guys, this next game is rapid fire. I'm timing you. You have 1 minute to talk. Neither the Ravens nor the Broncos have a functional offense, but only the Ravens have a quarterback. Denny Carter, we'll begin with you. What is your 1 minute takeaway for Broncos Ravens?
I don't even need a minute. Here's what I'll tell you. Ravens allow the 12th highest rate of positive rush plays this season. They have allowed the league's 6th highest rushing success rate since week 8. Latavius Murray is live once again. If Mike Boone doesn't come in and spoil everything for him. But yeah, I mean, Latavius is like locked into a pretty huge workload. I know things might change. I like him this week.
Boy, how bad does Mike Boone have to be, by the way? Where they just like keep trying to find anyone.
Well, Mike Boone's been on IR for weeks.
No, I know he has, but like he wasn't used before that. It's a huge L for analytics.
Kyle, 1 minute on the game. You've already wasted 10 seconds.
Isn't he team preseason?
You already wasted 10 seconds correcting us on Mike Boone, by the way, Kyle. So
that's all right. I don't need this game. Isn't a 3-minute game. I'm concerned that what we're seeing from the Ravens isn't, some bad luck, which some of it is. Mark Andrews, the luck doesn't seem to describe the way he drops touchdowns. It's almost consistent how often he drops touchdowns. I'm calling that bad luck. But really, the bad luck started when they lost Rashad Bateman, who was, and he still is, although it hasn't added in a while, 13th in yards per route run.
I seriously totally forgot about that guy.
Dude, he helped the offense so much. He was truly an elite downfield threat. Like I said, 13th in yards per route run. He a great amount of space to give up, easy receptions for Mark Andrews. And although it's only like an 11-game sample this year, and is averaging 6.5 more PPR points when Rashad Bateman was in the lineup. He's throwing fewer touchdowns, like 2.5 times fewer touchdowns. Yards per attempt is almost down by a yard. It's been a tough sledding without a guy who can really create space. And Demarcus Robinson or Devin Duvernay, whoever they choose to use this week. Robinson, if it is, he's like 66th in yards per route run. He doesn't fill that same role to the extent that Bateman did. So I think
it's been 1 minute, by the way.
Yeah, I think the Ravens passing attack will be better, but frankly, the loss of Bateman is showing to be very bad. So I don't think it'll rebound to where it was to start the year.
I had other stuff to talk about, but I love this Bateman thing. Let's talk about that. Think about the Chiefs. We're like, what are they doing? Oh, they're running out Justin Watson. A Chiefs cast-off is the Ravens' number one wide receiver right now. Like, it's pretty bad. I think they're going to be shifting to the run here against a defense that ranks 17th in EPA allowed per rush. They're very strong against the pass, but we could get J.K. Dobbins back this week, which is going to make the backfield a mess. I think you kind of trust Gus Edwards, maybe a little bit. He had 50% of snaps against the Jaguars if Dobbins doesn't go. But if Dobbins does go, I don't know if there's anything here. On the Broncos side, I just want to point out they're so consistent, which is like, this is a team that's reeling, right? They've scored 20 plus points just once all season. They've lost 7 of their last 8 games. Like, this team should be like wildly shifting in its approach, like 20% PROE, minus 20% PROE, like find something that's clicking. And every week they roll out the exact same, like slightly run first game plan. Like, come up with a new idea, Broncos. This one's not working.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Nathaniel Hackett is one and done. Really one of the strangest things we've ever seen in the NFL. Denny, and maybe the most surreal game of the year, Deshaun Watson is returning from his 11-game suspension for the Browns in his former home of Houston. As I said earlier this week with Lawrence and Kyle, it's a fancy situation a lot of us honestly would just rather not talk about. It's very weird. He shouldn't be playing football this year, but it's happening. He's back, and we need to know, how does this change the Browns offense?
Yeah, doesn't feel great to talk about this, but I actually think that the Browns won't have much reason to use Watson much in this game unless things go really sideways. They're playing, by almost every measure, the worst rush defense in the league. Cleveland has the 4th lowest pass rate over expected. Houston has the highest rate of missed tackles by a huge margin against opposing running backs, and they're dead last in EPA against the rush. So I think there's a possibility Deshaun Watson won't pass 20 times in this game. I mean, I think that it'll be a hugely run heavy game script unless, like I said, things go haywire. So I see him as a very shaky fantasy option in this one.
He hasn't even played for 2 years, so there will be a lot of incentive, to keep the restrictor plate on the offense, just against the worst run defense in the entire league. Anyone have anything to say about the Texans? We debated Dameon Pierce earlier this week. Kyle said he's not an RB2 anymore. He's been fired for that. He's not allowed to talk. But
how dare I slander the running back of the worst team in the NFL?
It's a good matchup, right?
Yeah, the Browns have a horrible defense. They really do.
It's bad. It's bad. It makes you wonder why the Bucs didn't try to score late in the game against them last week.
How crazy was that? They were just
that is really wild.
Check out Galaxy Brains this week. But is Nico Collins surpassed Brandon Cooks?
Yeah,
he has.
I ranked him ahead of Brandon Cooks, probably for the first time in the ranks this week. So
that's still very close, but he's running more routes now, and he's getting a little bit better target volume. So
you're going to get 10 of the saddest targets you've ever seen, but it's 10 targets. You can't turn that down.
You can't fight target City Hall.
I do agree with Denny that this is going to be a run heavy Cleveland offense, so that makes me a little more confident in Pierce in that, like, I don't think the Browns are just going to be kind of running away from. They'll probably outscore them pretty heavily, but it might, kind of take all 4 quarters to get there as opposed to, what the Dolphins did last week. So it makes Pierce a little bit more interesting.
The Chargers and Raiders meet up as 2 teams finally trending in the right direction, or at least supposedly. The Chargers were surprising, or there are, the Chargers are surprising narrow road underdogs in Las Vegas. I couldn't remember. The line has shifted in this game. I couldn't remember who has shifted in favor of Kyle. Justin Herbert finally had his first 3 touchdown game since week 2 in week 12. While the Raiders are one of the best matchups for any opposing quarterback, are we finally looking at the beginning of a Justin Herbert hot streak?
Yes, although I'm not sure it's for the right reasons. I've been watching too much Bachelor reruns, so I'm saying things are for the right reasons. But we got, like you said, we got 3 touchdowns last week, but he was held under 6 yards per attempt again. He had his lowest ADOT of the season. Obviously, we didn't have Mike Williams, per usual at this point, didn't have Mike Williams, and back-to-back DNPs for Mike. He's not playing this week. So it looks like they ran out the same losing formula they had been running out in every game where all of their receivers were beat up. They just got there with touchdowns this time. The upside is that if they make it through this week versus the defense that is second in points allowed to opposing quarterbacks, that is dead last in EPA per pass attempt or per drop back allowed, you can probably survive this week with a good Herbert performance, despite the lack of like the true deep threat on the team, because the opposing defense is so bad. And then maybe we get Mike Williams back and then things start cooking again. So I think the matchup will paste over the fact that this is still the Chargers team that we don't actually like to see.
It makes a lot of sense as a take. Denny, Josh Jacobs has had the 11th 300-yard scrimmage effort in NFL history, but he's highly, highly questionable with a calf injury. How does the Raiders backfield shake out if Josh Jacobs does not play? And what is such a good matchup? The Chargers are quite literally one of the worst run defenses of the 21st century. Daniel Popper of The Athletic had some really, really interesting stats on that if you check out his Twitter feed.
Yeah, I mean, it's the I'm going to use a word that Lawrence Jackson did not love, but it's a juicy matchup. And Lawrence mentioned this on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour the other day. But yeah, and so you want Josh Jacobs in there. Obviously, I think that he probably will play. Zamir White, I think, would be in line to get most of the early down stuff if Jacobs is out. Amir Abdullah got most of the work behind Jacobs in week 12. But again, I think, he's more of a pass catching specialist who, last year in Carolina, he actually was really efficient and really good in that pass catching role with the Panthers. I think that Abdullah becomes a somewhat interesting, like deep league PPR option if Jacobs is out. Not, Jacobs is playing, he gets so much of the workload that you can't play anybody else. But Zamir White is an uninspiring touchdown dependent RB3-ish.
It is a really good matchup. If Jacobs doesn't play, I'll probably have him as an RB3.
Yeah. And
I won't get him in the top 24.
Zamir White's not going out there and catching 4 or 5 passes. I mean, that's going to be Abdullah's thing.
Abdullah season for sure. Kerrane, I don't really know what this question even means. I just wrote Matt Collins, Foster Moreau, or both. Can you tell me?
Yeah, or both was pretty interesting. I was like, man,
can you tell me what this means? I wrote this question, by the way, for if you're listening and wondering.
As far as DFS dart throws go, which is where I feel like the only way you'd be playing these guys, like, sure, they're both in play.
Unfortunately, you're playing Foster Moreau in season long. I don't know, maybe you're not checking your
right,
season long lineups, but he is being played. Let me tell you,
that's fair. Yeah, and I think he's in play this week. Kind of touchdown or bust. Underlying volume pretty uninspiring for both guys. And I think Jacobs probably goes this week. So
I'm not so sure. I feel like they really pushed the envelope with him, and it seems like they got the 86-yard tutter, but in the process, sacrifice.
But at what cost?
Yeah, at what cost? Other than a stunning win.
But wait, so why are you so pessimistic? I didn't realize there was like legitimate pessimism for him to go. He was limited on Wednesday.
He was limited. I didn't like it was a vibes based take. It was early in the week. It seemed like there's some genuine pessimism amongst the Raiders media, but he is practicing. That is a very good sign.
Yeah, I took that as a good sign he would play too. The fact that he played through the injury for, I assume it's just literally one carry, maybe one or two.
It was adrenaline though.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can like argue that it's 2 carries. They thought the game would be over very quickly, and in fact it was. But yeah, the fact that he finished the game, then comes out limited, I think he's playing.
Yeah, I guess that's definitely the take.
And if he goes, this is a bad Chargers defense, period. You can pass on them if that's the way you like to do things, but the Raiders do not like to do things that way. They're definitely a run-based team. I think they'll lean on Jacobs. So, I wouldn't be all that excited to play ancillary pieces on this team.
Guys, we have a very long show today. We still have 4 games to get through, so it's a perfect time for a quick digression. Kyle mentioned The Bachelor. My wife and I had to stop watching. I think we determined the Zoomers they're just too boring. There's not enough drama with the new crop of bachelors and bachelorettes. They used to try to stab each other and stuff, and there's just none of that anymore. And it got too boring.
Well, aren't they all? I used to watch a little bit. I haven't watched in a while, but they're all trying to become influencers, right?
Yeah. So no one wants to tarnish their brand by being dramatic and right. Sure, I broke a Chardonnay glass and stabbed someone, but I could still sell sunscreen.
It's harder to sell free people merchandise when you've stabbed someone.
So I think that is what's happening.
I will say on the last season of Paradise, I think maybe they recognized this, and at one point they just removed, the opposite sex, the guys or the girls from. I always call it the island, like it's Lost, but I think it's just like a beach town or whatever.
It is.
Just remove them, introduce new people, giving them the unlimited level of temptation, which was disgusting. It's like when the Joker walks in and throws down the 2 broken halves of the pool cue, and he said, "Figure it out" or whatever. But they understood that. And they're trying to make good content, even if it's ruining these people's lives.
Yeah, they work on ruining their lives. I will say that. You got to give them that. Talking about ruining our lives, the Indianapolis Colts receiving agonizingly bad quarterback play. The Colts arrive in Dallas as nearly 2 touchdown dogs. Nearly, that's doing a lot of work. They're 10.5-point underdogs. So 3.5 points away from 2 touchdowns. But Kyle, break down one of the sleepiest games of Week 13 after you just broke down The Bachelor for us.
Coming to you live from Dallas, I'd rather not. This game doesn't look very fun. The Cowboys have had a negative 5% pass rate over expected since Week 8. They've been beating up on, they're a good team. They've been beating up on typically lesser opponents. They have a really strong defense that also gives them often great field position with sacks. So they get to play in a way that I think is also fair to call sleep. They have a really good running back in their backfield. So I think they'll have another very run-heavy performance this week versus an offense that I simply have no faith in their ability to do anything. The one thing that was exciting about the Colts in the past few weeks, Jonathan Taylor's topped a 90% snap share twice. And though 2 weeks ago, it looked like we were returning to they spell him with another pass-catching back. Didn't happen last week, 79% route rate. So I'd be almost more comfortable bumping him back to that top 3 spot.
Here, sorry if you're watching on YouTube. Kyle, we're going to do that over. Your audio is very shaky.
Okay. Is it any better now? Did it end better?
It ended better. So YouTube viewers, so the sausage gets made. Sometimes the audio just totally goes out. But you're getting a special behind the scenes view here because this won't be on the podcast form. So stick with us while we, I was trying to think of one of those old technical difficulty placards, but I can't think of it. Kyle, tell us again what we need to know about the Indianapolis Colts and the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, coming to you live from Dallas, it does look like an incredibly sleepy game. The Cowboys had a negative 5% pass rate over expected since Week 8. They've only reached a 0% pass rate over expected in one game this year. They're perfectly fine riding a really awesome defense that sets them up with great field position via turnovers, via sacks. So if that's going to be the case again this week, which facing Matt Ryan typically does that, I expect a lot of carries and not a lot of volume. You're, like we talked about with Moreau, you're starting Schultz because he's a tight end, and you're starting CeeDee Lamb. This feels like a less of a Michael Gallup spot. So I would only really be starting the guys you have to, or CeeDee Lamb, and the backfield guys, obviously. The other side, the only really notable thing that happened at least was Jonathan Taylor, a 79% route rate, a snap share over 90. That was what we saw 3 weeks ago now. Jeff Saturday's said his first start, as if like coaches get called starts, but whatever you want to call it, his first time coaching the team. And it looks like we're back to that like true 3 down, 100%, like almost a McCaffrey role in terms of snaps and routes role for Jonathan Taylor. So I could probably argue that he should be thrown back into the top 3. Maybe the offense holds him to top 5 status. Jelani Woods banged up after a true breakout performance, like 8 catches, 96 yards. So that's just something to monitor to see how much he's actually able to play.
Every Colts tight end not named Molly Cox apparently is capable of catching 8 passes for 92 yards. It's really quite something. We're having our people look into it. We're having our people look into the Commanders at the New York Giants going to war as questionable contenders in the tough NFC East. Patrick Kerrane. Washington and New York are doing battle in East Rutherford. Take it away and tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, so the Commanders have been run heavy with Taylor Heineke under center. They have a minus 9% pass rate over expected since week 7. Only the Titans, Panthers, Falcons, and Bears have been more run heavy. This is a team that wants to establish the run, and they get a Giants defense this week that ranks 27th in EPA allowed per rush. So we're going to see the Commanders establishing the run. We can count on that. Brian Robinson led the way last week with a 48% snap share. He actually ran pretty well as well. He was RB4 in rush yards over expected per attempt. He was first in success rate. He's been terrible in success rate this year. Kind of a breakout game for him. Maybe a mini breakout, but still, I would expect him to lead the way in snaps. It's basically like kind of they're just running the same matchup back. They're going to have him established as kind of the early down hammer, I think, and he's probably a viable RB2, definitely touchdown dependent play, but viable. Terry McLaurin, I think the only viable guy in the passing game. I think he's very touchdown dependent though here because of how low overall game environment could be, because it's not just the Commanders that are going to be run heavy this week. The Giants, they're also a run heavy team, but they're facing a Commanders defense that ranks 5th in EPA allowed per rush, 5th in rushing success rate allowed. So they're, I don't think, going to be particularly efficient. The only way they're efficient on the ground is if Saquon Barkley rips off some long plays. He's been very boom bust this year. He's RB32 in success rate this season. He is 2nd in breakaway yards per game. So, I mean, is he going to rip off a long run this year? I don't know. But if he does, that would really, really help this Giants defense, because otherwise I think they're going to be struggling to maintain drives. They're also going against a Washington pass defense that ranks 3rd in drop back success rate. So this is not going to be a very good game for Daniel Jones, most likely. Saquon could probably get there. He can definitely get there, but who knows if that'll actually happen. I'll say Darius Slayton has a 13.5 ADOT, so like he only needs maybe 1 or 2 plays to be kind of a viable flex play, but it's pretty thin. So there's not a lot in this game.
You guys see my really random Darius Slayton stat on Twitter?
I did. What was it?
Well, I noticed that he had at least 58 yards in 5 straight games. And I was like, I bet there's probably only 1 or 2 other players that have had 58 yards in 5 straight games. And the only other one was Jalen Waddle. So he hasn't had like a ton of ceiling, Darius Slayton, in that, but he has established a real floor, and he is getting like the real deal. Like, this is the only guy we have to throw to, so we're going to throw to him treatment.
So you're saying play Slayton over Waddle?
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I was listening to, I believe it was Seth Walder from ESPN was on Kevin Cole's podcast, and he was asking them about this ESPN open score metric that I've referenced a couple times. And he was talking about Darius Slayton because he's crushing in it this year. And he was horrible in the same metric last year and was not great like in his previous years either. And they're like trying to figure out like what happened. Apparently the best guess is that he's running like different routes now. Like he's literally running more slants.
He has like one sort of good player and is trying to get him open, basically, I guess.
And it's working. Darius Slayton, 4th year breakout.
Well, you mentioned life can be hard for Daniel Jones. Chase Young should be back for the Commanders this week. So going to be a tough scene for the Giants offense. We really, really need Saquon Barkley. If you're listening, to bust a long run or 2, please, please, please. The Bucks and Saints square off in Tampa with the uninspired Bucks acting as 3.5-point road favorites against the drain-circled Saints. Kerrane, as dismal as the Bucks have been, Chris Godwin is the Week 12 bright spot. This is, again, as Mike Evans struggled. Is there any chance, or any chance is not strong enough, should a rankings flip be afoot between Chris Godwin and Mike Evans? The gap had kind of been narrowing, and you could argue the past 2 weeks Chris Godwin has gone ahead of Mike Evans.
So we have the narrative here, right? The Lattimore narrative. Do we have to worry about that?
Right.
We do. And we also have the Dennis Allen, Tom Brady narrative. The Saints have been his nemesis since he arrived in Tampa Bay.
So maybe Lattimore narrative would give the edge to Godwin here, but I think if we're just like looking at the underlying metrics here, I think Evans still is the ceiling play. He has a 22% first read target rate over the last 3 weeks. Godwin's at 16%. Evans has a 14.1 ADOT to Godwin's 6.3. Godwin's always been more of an underneath guy, but that's a really shallow ADOT for Godwin. So every target that Evans is getting is, significantly more valuable. And I think he's still a better bet. 4 targets, his underlying target volume in terms of expected yards per out run is better as well. So in general, I think Evans is the way to go. And I would also note that the Buccaneers have not been as committed to the pass this year. They've gone negative in PROE 4 times already this season. They went negative in PROE just once in 20 games last year. So, we're seeing them shift toward the run. Not all the time, but it's happening in a way it really just was not happening. Their pass rate over expected also half of what it was last year. So in terms of going with like the Godwin volume PPR play, it's definitely not as exciting as it was when we knew for a fact that the Buccaneers were going to drop back a bunch.
Man, just really, really sad times.
Real quick, the kind of passes that Brady's throwing are better for Godwin and suggest that he should continue leading the passing attack here. Brady has the 7th lowest air yards per attempt since week 8. And it's real close to the dead last, actually. So it's lots of little check downs underneath stuff. And that's not Mike Evans' thing.
So we're not
getting not Mike Evans' thing. Marshawn Lattimore too. 3 catches, I believe, in his career on average for 50 yards, well under half a touchdown. The last time they played, they got in a fight and he got ejected. So
didn't he get ejected this year?
I don't even think that's the only time it's happened.
No, it's happened several times.
Yeah. But
you got to play Godwin. You can't play a guy's going to get ejected.
Real bold call there. So we don't have a lot of optimism on the Bucs passing attack right now, Denny. Do we have any optimism on Alvin Kamara, or is Alvin Kamara's season officially over?
It's not over. I mean,
it's over. But it's fine.
Okay, like last week was a disaster. Obviously, 2 fumbles.
By last week, you mean the entire season?
No, not the entire
Pat,
season.
what stage of grief would you say Denny's in?
Wait a sec. Wait just a second.
Take us through it, Denny.
We have exactly 7 running backs in the entire NFL who have more expected fantasy points than Alvin Kamara. So I don't want to hear it. He's elite. He had 7 targets. He had 7 targets last week.
One might say the Deontay Johnson of running backs.
Yeah, I was going to make that joke.
Look, I mean, if you're going to smear him like that, that's fine. But
it is borderline libel.
He's still getting a lot of looks. He's still playing a lot of snaps. You just keep playing. It's a terrible offense. Like he needs a little help. But once again, I'm emphasizing 8th in expected points, 3rd in expected receiving points among running backs. So you're not getting many better options from a PPR standpoint at this point. Now, obviously, if you have a couple like elite options for some reason at running back, you can bench Kamara, but you just keep rolling with them. It's fine. You're fine. Everything's fine.
He's cleared 50 yards rushing 1 time in the past 6 weeks.
You don't care about rushing. Who cares about rushing?
62. He's cleared 10 carries only 3 times the past.
You don't care about carries. You don't care about carries.
Looking at his box scores.
You don't care about fantasy points. You don't care about fantasy points.
His box scores were so much better with Jameis. Like the narrative is like the checkdowns would help.
No.
His box scores were a lot better with Jameis. Just make the change. Make the change.
No, don't make
the change. Make it.
You love guys with broken bones. Jamar Chase, Jameis Winston.
Well, I may or may not have a lot riding on Chris Olave, and we need to get this deep game cooking. 5 catches for 62 yards ain't going to cut it anymore, Andy. We need Jameis. We need him back. We need him bad. Kyle, what goes on in the Bucs backfield if Leonard Fournette returns?
Yeah, looks like he's going to return. He got in a full practice to start the week, so I think we'll be seeing him back. Important note, though, the last time we saw him, it was in Germany, and Rachaad White actually got the start. He outsnapped him in the first half before Fournette went down, though Fournette did, I believe, see more touches in that first half. White, he grades better in yards after contact per carry, in missed tackles forced per attempt. I would imagine that they lean it. He's not elite in those metrics, but Fournette has been like unusable on the ground. At least White has a little bit of a spark. I'd imagine they split the backfield and we see White, unfortunately, frankly, get more of the carries. While we've seen Leonard Fournette not elite as a receiver, but still very usable and paces the team, at least the team in yards per route run. So I think he probably these are scammy PPR. You brought Devontae Adams up as scam PPR. I'd like that to be remembered.
Hold on. That was a joke.
It was a bit.
That was a joke. Right. That was a joke. Because he's made some really big plays down the field too.
These are scammy PPR points, but I think he'll be the one getting them. So I think fighting the tackles better, but still not extremely valuable. And Fournette, less valuable than he used to be, but still the guy that picks up the receptions. So it's probably a backfield where the return of Fournette makes both incredibly unexciting.
So I would push back a little bit on the idea that Fournette's going to have like the role on passing downs and White's going to be like the early down guy. Like that's not really who White is. And, they've had him like, that's not really how they used him in Germany either. They were kind of splitting series more than splitting the roles. So I'd also note that Rachaad White was terrible in all the rushing metrics before a few weeks ago, and he's run a bit better. And I think it's good time for him to run a bit better since he's, trying to win the starting job. So I would think that it's more like a 1A, 1B with White and Fournette, and they're both getting some of the good stuff and some of the bad stuff.
Dennis Allen, just have some courage. Have some courage. It's Jameis time. It's Jameis country. Let's ride.
That's a good way to preface starting Jameis Winston too. It's actually incredibly fitting. Actually.
Jameis country. Let's ride. Rams country, let's ride. The worst game of the week. The Rams calling it quits on the season. Matthew Stafford doesn't play football anymore. Cooper Kupp doesn't play football anymore. Aaron Donald doesn't play football anymore. And the Seahawks are still only 7-point road favorites. I mean, I guess kind of a big deal to be getting a touchdown on the road against the defending and the Super Bowl champions when you're starting Geno Smith. But Denny, I don't know. Just get us home with this game. Bryce Perkins, I don't know. Is that his name? Is it Bryson? Is it Bryce? I don't remember.
We don't even want to be here anymore. No, it's we could be in, depending on if game script stays reasonably neutral for a little while here. Could be in for a DK Metcalf blow-up game because his expected points are off the charts over the past, 4 weeks, over the past month, basically 3 weeks.
Say for his entire career, and surely one of these years.
So over the past 3 games, Metcalf has 55 expected fantasy points. Tyler Lockett has 27 expected fantasy points. Lockett has, like he does, he scores touchdowns, and so he's gotten there for fantasy. Metcalf has gotten pretty unlucky in a few measurements. So I really think that you can't bank on a blow-up game for Metcalf, but I like his chances here. As for the Rams, look, I'm just going to put it out here. Okay. We talked on Monday about Van Jefferson. I'm just saying Van Jefferson is the only receiver who's running all the routes in this offense. Okay. He could luck into a bunch of targets here. So,
emphasis on luck.
Consider him.
Emphasis on targets too. No actual guarantee of points.
Yeah, or even targets. I mean, they almost Kendall Hinton Bryce Perkins last week.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Perkins did not work out like I thought as far as the rushing goes. Only 9 rushes in massively negative game script. Thought we'd get a little more than that.
Yeah, it's because Sean McVay was concussed from when that guy.
Also, obviously, I just want to say you're done with Higbee. Okay, you're
done with Higbee. Yeah.
Well, hold on. I don't actually. He was hurt. He was hurt.
You are
a healthy Higbee's not running 10 routes.
If he runs 100% of the routes, you're still done with Higbee.
I actually don't know about. Have you looked at tight end recently?
I think you're done. I've been one of Higbee's biggest supporters.
Yeah, me too.
In fantasy, you're done with Higbee until. I mean, I would be okay maybe going back in once I see that if he's at 80% routes this week. We can talk about Higbee in week 14. But that's the only way.
That's a good mindset to take, actually. That is a good mindset.
But a rushing quarterback takes away so many of the attempts, right? So with Stafford, we knew we had a statue who was going to throw 35, 40 times. With Bryce Perkins, you guys are going to run 10 times a game. So he's only going to throw 20, 25 times. It just takes away so much volume, as we've seen with offenses quarterbacked by every rushing quarterback.
Yeah, if Tyler Higbee saw like 50% of the team's passing yards last week, I literally think that would have been 50 passing yards. Like there's so little production.
Yeah, it was
he has
100,
to be like
100 total.
Yeah, he has to be like Cooper Kupp levels of target volume just to be Foster Moreau level of tight end production.
Man, oh man. But are the Rams going to trade Matthew Stafford back to the Lions?
Lions wouldn't take him. They wouldn't want him.
I actually think the best thing that happened to Matthew Stafford this year was Perkins and Wolford, because they're so bad. It's like, okay, maybe it is the offensive line. Like maybe Stafford, I mean, he's still a pick six machine, which,
that's always
the
good.
problem. Yeah. That's not
other than giving 6 points to the other team every
But he was pick
then.
six machine last year as well. I mean, they literally changed their offense heading into the playoffs because he kept throwing pick sixes. So I feel like he comes off looking better now that we've seen what the other quarterbacks are doing.
Clearly they were a good team, but man, the 2021 Rams, amongst Super Bowl winners, near the bottom.
Fraudulent.
Yeah, Chiefs maybe play a better second half against.
maybe just don't botch the time at the end of the first half. Remember that where they gave away 4 points?
Or you know what? Maybe give the Bills a shot. If that's how you're going to do it the next week, just let the Bills. You didn't need to drive down the field. Just let them have it.
The Bengals still almost won the Super Bowl. My goodness. My goodness that the show is over. I'm sad. I've been having fun with my friends. I'm going to miss you guys.
That was good.
But I'll see you Sunday, though. And you'll see all of us before then because we have a lot of content up on the site. Pat Kerrane and Kyle Dvorchak have a DFS chat coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Denny has
1 p.m.-ish.
1 p.m.-ish. Denny has this funneling article. I'll be updating the rankings. We all have a bunch of stuff on the site. Pat Kerrane, of course, the signature walkthrough dropping Friday. Is that why the chat might be late if you're not done?
No, it's because I'm going to be on the Fantasy Football Happy
Hour.
Hour.
That's right. Check out Pat on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry. Check out everything on NBC Sports Edge /Rotoworld. Thank you so much for listening. For Pat, for Denny, for Kyle, I'm Pat. We'll be back later.